Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're powered by CLNS Media. Today on the show, I've got good friend of the program, Zach Harper here. Just mere weeks away from moving to the beautiful, sunny Hollywood, California. How's it going, Zach?
We're basically neighbors, right?
Yeah,
in a couple of weeks.
We're going to be within probably a 5-minute drive of each other. It's fantastic.
Next time we do this, we'll just be podcasting from a couple of blocks away, as opposed to hundreds of miles.
Yeah, because there's no circumstance where we can actually do this in person. It just makes no sense.
Makes no sense at all.
We're going to talk about the Timberwolves today. We're going to talk about just general NBA trade rumors as well. Obviously, a lot's going on right now. And right as I called Zach to start recording this, Woj broke a interesting little tidbit. I don't even know that it was really news. I feel like it was kind of obvious that Minnesota would probably try and put an offer together for Jimmy Butler. But, the fact that it's at least out there now, I guess, is newsworthy in itself.
Yeah, it's weird. There's a 25% chance he just accidentally sent an old draft from last year at this time, right? He was just going through his old drafts on his phone. He's like, "Oh, I've never sent this. Whoops, I accidentally sent this one. Oh, it's out there. Let's just see what happens."
Oh yeah, I guess that this is accurate anyway. Might as well just get rid of it.
Right, exactly. It's not a lie. It's just a year late.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, if you remember last year at the NBA draft, for the listeners, there was a lot of conversation surrounding Jimmy Butler, surrounding the Minnesota Timberwolves, surrounding Chris Dunn as well. And this is kind of where we'll start, I guess, given the fact that we're talking about the Timberwolves, and then we'll kind of go into other trade rumors and then go back to the Timberwolves. Looking at it from the Timberwolves' perspective, is there a price too high beyond trading Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins that you wouldn't be willing to trade for Jimmy Butler?
I guess I would feel, and this will probably sound stupid, I guess I would feel a little weird about including Zach LaVine in a deal just because they have so little shooting on the roster.
Right.
And Jimmy Butler has been a good shooter in the past, and he's been a horrendous shooter in the past from outside. So I guess I would feel a little weird about that. But at the same time, if you gave up LaVine in the number 7 pick for Jimmy Butler, you're still doing pretty well. He's the number, I guess he would be 1B on the team in terms of offensive options, because I still think everything runs through Cat. But that's all right. If you have to wonder about should I give up Zach LaVine coming off an ACL injury for Jimmy Butler? You're probably in a good position.
Yeah, really. If it was Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn in number 7, I still feel like I do that if I'm Minnesota.
Yeah, because you're essentially just trading Zach LaVine in number 7 at this point.
Well, I mean, Chris Dunn was a disaster this year, but he showed signs. It was a very Marcus Smartian rookie year, right? He was really good defensively, but was just an abject dumpster fire offensively. Yeah,
he was he's not even just a good defender for a rookie. He's a flat out good defender.
Right.
Already. He's going to be a monster on that end of the floor. But offensively, I could probably count on one hand how many times he hit a shooter in the shooting pocket with a pass. I mean, he had that one move on Shabazz Napier where he dribbled the ball around him like it was an and one mixtape, and then that might have been his only offensive highlight of the season.
Didn't he really miss? He missed after that, or no? He passed to Gorgi Dieng, and Gorgi Dieng missed. So it wasn't even it led to a made shot.
Right? Yeah. Not a lot happened for him on the offensive end that was all that good. I still think all right, maybe he ends up being sort of a combo guard version of Tony Allen. That's not a great player, but that's a valuable role player you can have on a team, right? That's an okay player. But if you're giving him up in a trade, I don't think you worry that he's going to make you pay for that someday.
Well, he's equally as big as Tony Allen too. There's no reason that he couldn't just be Tony Allen beyond the general Tony Allen being fucking crazy part of it.
Right.
That matters. But from a skill perspective, there's every reason to think that Chris Dunn is going to be Chris Allen. Good God. Chris Dunn is going to be an all NBA level defender. I said that at the time that he was drafted, and I believe that he probably will be that level.
Yeah, he really is. He can guard 1 and 2. He's just a pest. He's just really annoying. And you're right. He is kind of big. He's a big point guard. And so I guess he's kind of a medium to small size shooting guard, but you can get away with a lot when you're as active as he is. So he's a nice role player to have. There's still, I think, this idea that there may be a bridge point guard to him in the future, and I think they still believe he can be a starting point guard in the NBA, but man, he would have to improve a lot for me to believe that.
I mean, if we're talking about a bridge point guard for like a 23-year-old, what are we talking about? Like that's the weirdest thing to say almost.
Hopefully we're not talking about Derrick Rose. That's the only thing. I don't care what other point guard could be out there. I just hope we're not talking about Derrick Rose as a bridge point guard.
Oh, man, that would be a disaster for the Timberwolves. That would just be so bad.
It would really test my theory that there's no such thing as a bad 2-year contract.
Oh, no. That would test the theory of there not being a bad 1-year contract.
Right, exactly.
Like, forget 2 years. I mean, Derrick Rose makes 0 sense on this Timberwolves roster. Tyus Jones might be better than Derrick Rose right now.
They still love him. I mean, Tom Thibodeau still speaks very highly of him by all accounts. I think it kind of feels a little bit like when Tinkerbell was dying, right? Like Peter Pan had to clap to bring Tinkerbell back to life. That's what it feels like with Thibodeau and Derrick Rose. Like he's just clapping until Derrick Rose shows some life.
Well, the funniest stat that I saw from last year, and I said it on the podcast that I did with Reegs about the Knicks, their assist percentage, the New York Knicks assist percentage, fell by like 10% with Derrick Rose on the floor last season. That's always excellent when that is your point guard and your assist percentage is falling by 10% when he steps on the floor.
Yeah, that's but I'm sure like the Knicks were probably already at a close to 100% with that triangle offense. It really promotes ball movement and passing and great team play. And when we saw the Knicks last year, that's exactly what they were.
They were tremendous at it.
Right, exactly.
Let's go back to Jimmy Butler here. Jimmy Butler, I would be concerned about him getting to his next contract under Tom Thibodeau. Like he would just flat out play him like 45 minutes a game. He would play Andrew Wiggins like 40 minutes a game. And that would be an awesome athletic wing combination. And I think that Jimmy Butler would obviously take care of a lot of the ball handling woes, a lot of the point guard woes that have undertaken Minnesota relatively over the last couple years. But it's not like the most ideal fit in terms of floor spacing, as you kind of mentioned with, the Zach LaVine portion of this. And that scares me a little bit. They would need to like drastically overpay for a shooter in free agency, like almost like a JJ Redick and play like Jimmy Butler at point guard kind of. It'd be a really weird roster, I feel like.
Yeah, it's not a great fit unless we're looking at like Jimmy Butler, 37 to 38% shooter, right? And we've gotten that I think twice in his career, like somewhere in that. Mm-hmm. It's not the most. I mean, all right, he went like the first year doesn't really count, but he was 18% the first year. Then he went to 38%, then 28%, then 37%, then 31%, then 36%. So I guess next year it would be a disaster, and the year after that it would be a great fit because he just seems to be up and down, up and down, up and down. Like it helps a little bit that Wiggins improved so much with his 3-point shot this year. He was about league average. I think he was just under 36%. Yep. So it's not like he's not Andre Robertson out there, so it's not a huge hit in it. And I think you can feel pretty good that he's going to continue to improve his jumper and improve his awareness of when to shoot. But still, like that, it's just so risky. Like you can't. As much as I love him, like you can't have Karl Anthony Towns the best shooter on the floor.
Yeah,
like,
no,
just, I mean, like I'm all for getting weird, but that's just not a good idea.
Well, he's also like a 36% 3-point shooter. Like he is an excellent shooter for a center. He's not an excellent shooter.
Exactly.
So that's a little bit scary. Like, what is the most you would give up if you're Minnesota? Like, I feel like Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, and 7 is my absolute most. But I'm not like certain I would give that up almost. Like I would have real hesitancy giving that up for 2 years of Jimmy Butler whenever my roster kind of fits going forward like 5 years down the road as opposed to 2.
Yeah, I think because of their free agency situation in Chicago, like I may try to get away with like number 7, Chris Dunn, and Gorgi Dieng. Yeah. And like just see like, all right, here's a big man who can space the floor a little bit. Who's a when he's not traveling off a pump fake, like he's a pretty solid offensive player. He's very inconsistent defensively, but everyone still kind of thinks like he'll get it defensively eventually and be like more of an impact player on that end of the floor. I think if you can get away with that, like I think Gorgi fits in nicely as the third big, ideally for Thibodeau and the Wolves long term. But if you can kind of already unload that contract extension, you just have more flexibility with the money coming up, right? And the way you can kind of allocate those funds and the way you can kind of shape out the roster. So that would be like I still would, if you had to switch out Zach LaVine and instead of Gorgi Dieng, I think I'd do it. But you want to try to get into that sweet spot where you still have an asset to move. And I think it's easier to move Zach down the line when he proves that the knee is fine for that maybe stretch four that you would need, as opposed to hoping that you can move Gorgi for another active veteran.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. The Gorgi Dieng contract was one of the weirder extensions of like last year's extension period, like at the end of October. I don't know entirely why they decided to pay him, like $64 million over 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think they looked at it as like, this guy could get a lot more in free agency, which I agree. Like, I think he could hit restricted free agency and get, like 4 years, $80 million. I don't think that's crazy. So you get a discount in that sense. And at the same time, like, I think they looked at like the move, and maybe this isn't the way to judge things, but they looked at the move with OKC and Enes Kanter of like, you know what, we're just going to have this guy, and he's our, ideally our third big, and you're going to have to pay a guy big money off the bench anyway. So we're going to have Gorgi. We can play him together with Karl. If we find that stretch four, like whether it's a Paul Millsap or JaMychal Green or whatever, like you can find that kind of stretchy four who can play some defense. We'd love to put him next to Karl and then him next to Gorgi and kind of mix and match there. I think it was more of just like, let's keep our roster flexibility open with how we can play our big man rotation and hope things fall into place.
Yeah, I will say, like, I would have been shocked if Gorgi Dieng would have gotten like 480 on this market. Like, the big man market is just
Bismack Biyombo. I know it's a different player. Bismack Biyombo got $72 million. He sucks.
Yeah,
so I just think like at that point, Yamahimi got $64 million. Like, Gorgi's better than Yamahimi.
But there were more teams with cap space last year too. Which
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, which kind of like throws all of this into flux a little bit. But like, you're right in that you have Gorgi Dieng. He is an effective player, like kind of. I mean, he is an effective player. It's unfair to say he's not. I mean, he can pass the ball a little bit. He can knock down 18-footers, 20-footers. Kind of effective around the rim, like in that he's at least long, but not necessarily a guy that's going to like, block explosive. A ton of shots. Yeah. Like, he's not Enes Kanter defensively. He's not a great defender, but he's not Enes Kanter either.
Right, exactly. And he's not like, I mean, he's probably not the guy. Like, Enes, you can run the ball through. You can throw the ball into the post and run a second unit with him. You're not going to do that with Gorgi. He's more of a guy who's playing out of the mid post and everything. But
not a killer pick and roll player either.
Like he can pick and pop pretty well. Like he's a good outside shooter. He's stretched the corners a little bit this year, and I think you can expect more of that moving forward because he looks pretty comfortable shooting it. But still, like it's just one of those guys is like he does everything pretty solidly, but he's not great at anything.
Yeah, that's like kind of like an effective-ish basketball player. He shot 43 three-pointers this year, 37%. That's fine. He can hopefully get that out to the corners even more effectively going forward. And that corner three is incredibly important for him, particularly if they're going to play him with Karl Anthony Towns. Because he needs to be able to not just be a short corner guy, because he's not necessarily the most effective finisher around the rim. Like, he's not like Kenneth Faried, like exploding and dunking back when Kenneth Faried was like 25 years old. Like, he needs to be able to not just be able to shoot the short corner, he needs to be able to shoot from three in the corner to actually space the floor if he's going to play significantly next to Towns.
Yeah, and especially like just for whatever reason, let's say they run that starting five back next year. Zach gets healthy and everything. He really needs to be able to stretch the floor if you're going to have him on the floor with Wiggins, even though I think Wiggins' jumper is good enough moving forward, and Rubio on the floor, who shot well the last 3 months of the season, but we've gone through this thing before of like, hey, maybe Rubio's turning around with his jumper, and then the next year it starts out horribly.
Yeah. Let's talk about, what the next step is if a trade for Jimmy Butler was to go down. This is probably getting ahead of things in a lot of ways because the Cavs are chasing Jimmy Butler, apparently, according to Mark Stein. And the Phoenix Suns, according to someone that I saw, is apparently chasing Jimmy Butler as well. And that would just make zero sense to me whatsoever. Like, at least Minnesota has, pieces to where they can pivot and compete relatively quickly. What is the next step for the Timberwolves, though, if they were to go out and get a Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, it's still finding that, not that he wouldn't be good enough, but like still finding another veteran voice. I mean, that was the biggest thing this past season is they went through a lot of lumps because because the front office wouldn't overpay and overcommit for the veterans. Like, they went after Al Horford. Al Horford wasn't interested. They went after Courtney Lee. Courtney Lee was mildly interested. They went after Luol Deng. They wouldn't give him a fourth year, so he went to L.A. with that fourth year. They went out and they hunted out those veterans who could come in and kind of help these young guys learn, but ultimately they didn't overspend and they didn't overcommit, and they said, all right, if we can't get these targets, then we'll just kind of fill in the roster here and there. They get Cole Aldrich, get Brandon Rush, and we'll let the young guys learn. And I think in the long run, it helps out. Last year, when we're all projecting like, hey, maybe this team can make the playoffs, it ends up being horribly wrong, right? So I still think they're looking for those guys. Like, I still think, they're going to pursue someone like a Taj Gibson. They're going to pursue Andre Iguodala. They're going to pursue Patrick Patterson, or not so much a veteran, but JaMychal Green. Like, they're going to go after these guys. They're going to go after maybe George Hill. These are the guys they're going to try to bring in, these quality veterans who can really bolster the learning curve. And that was the biggest problem with Cat last year, is he took a step back defensively because he didn't have Kevin Garnett there to like kind of keep him focused, keep him learning these things, these little tricks of the trade, like, hey, this guy just did this to you. Why don't you can counter with this, right? Or you can load up this way. And so because he didn't have that veteran guy, shocker, Jordan Hill wasn't that guy. But because he didn't have that veteran guy, I think he really got confused with how to learn this system. And so if you can it doesn't even have to be a guy all that familiar with Thibodeau's system. It just has to be a veteran who knows the tricks of the trade. So I think they'll go after those guys and see if they can kind of fill in the soft spots. They'll try to fill in that bridge point guard just in case they still believe in Chris Dunn down the road. And this is where you'll see them really attempt to bring in some talent, some veteran talent to Minnesota, which is, the last time they went out and got a real free agent was Kevin Martin.
That's a good question.
The time before that was, I think, a sign-in trade with Marko Jaric. Like, obviously not a big time destination for free agents to come, and it's hard to sell veterans on a young team that hasn't won yet.
And that's in Minnesota.
Right, and that's in Minnesota on top of that.
Yeah, and you have to live in Minnesota in the winter. Cole Aldrich, man. Cole Aldrich, up from, where is he from? Is he from Wisconsin, Minnesota? He's from the
Minnesota,
north. Yeah. He's used to that, like, lumber weather.
That's like, he's walking around in the winter with a shirt off. Like, he doesn't care.
The last thing I will say about Chris Dunn is that I just think it'd be really funny if the Bulls traded for him and then had, like, Jaren Grant. They re-signed Michael Carter-Williams. They just have, like, Rajon Rondo. Rajon Rondo. Campaign is, like, their, point guard rotation fivesome, and all of them, like, can't shoot at all. And are, like, other than, like, Campaign, like, all of them are, like, these bigger, longer guys, like, that are just not able to space the floor entirely. It would just be hilarious.
It's like the Bulls management went and saw all those guards that Danny Ainge went out and got over the last couple of years and thought, what if we did that, but they were all terrible?
Yeah, what if we took like the second helping of those point guards?
Right, exactly.
Let's kind of table the Jimmy Butler talk, I guess, and move into, more Timberwolves talk. Where are you on Andrew Wiggins, I guess? And what do you think of, like, the narrative that he is some sort of bust? Because I think it's absurd to, like, even consider Andrew Wiggins a bust at this stage, but I also want to hear it from you.
I feel like I can tell how many people have watched a lot of Timberwolves games the last 3 years based on their opinion of Andrew Wiggins. Now, I don't think you have to believe he's a future All-NBA player, maybe not even a future All-Star, but if you think he's a bust, I just don't understand what you're watching. Like, he's improved greatly over the last 2 years. Defensively, he still has a ton of work to do. I think he got confused at times. He falls asleep off the ball at times, but I still think he's an above average on-ball defender, and he's a guy who, since day one of his rookie year, has been asked to defend the best player on the floor every time. Like, whether that's LeBron James or Jimmy Butler or James Harden or Chris Paul, like, he's asked to defend that guy every single night. So yeah, he's going to get torched because he's defending the best scorer on the other team every night. Off the ball, he has so much to work on because he does just kind of lose lapses. Has these lapses where he loses focus within the rotations or the help, or how far he should come over or whatever. So he has a lot to learn there. But on the ball, I think he's pretty solid. And so on that end of the floor, I'm not terribly worried, and especially as they play longer and longer together. On the offensive end of the floor, the jumper improved greatly. About a league average 3-point shooter. I guess I didn't love how much he kind of regressed in terms of getting to the free throw line last year. And I think you'd like to see him attack the basket a little bit more, and he seemed to fall in love with that jumper that was improving. But he got so much better, running pick and rolls. He got so much better finding guys when the defense committed. Some of that could be just noise, and that there was a certain point where teams just stopped being worried about the Timberwolves because they're bad. And so you kind of have to parse out that stuff. Like a year ago, Zach LaVine had this amazing final 2.5 months, and you had to figure out is this real, or is this just because no one cares about playing the Timberwolves anymore? And it turned out it was pretty real. Not 100% real, but he is actually that great of a shooter. He's a high volume, high percentage guy from the 3-point line, and he can really score in those situations. And so that turned out to be pretty real. This time, I think Andrew Wiggins' production this year is pretty real. You'd like him to be a better playmaker for others, but I just don't care if he grabs rebounds. And
why would you?
I looked at this thing. The Timberwolves are a pretty solid rebounding team, and so I looked at the reason his rebounds were still down, and there were two main reasons. One, he's on the perimeter almost always, defending a perimeter player, and because of that, they don't ask him to crash the boards a whole lot. They kind of want him to be around that 3-point line to mid-court area so that they can get out in transition. He can be one of those main guys in transition.
Yeah, so Minnesota is essentially the same team rebounding the basketball with Andrew Wiggins on the floor versus off the floor. Their overall rebounding percentage goes slightly up to 51.4% from 50.8% with him off of the floor. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. They're hoping Carl, Gorgi, or Ricky grab a rebound, and then get out and let Zach run, let Andrew run. That's kind of the design. And then on top of that, I looked at another aspect of it. He had a higher contested rebound percentage than LeBron, than Kawhi, and one other impressive wing in terms of rebounding. And it's okay, so when he goes and gets rebounds, he's better than those, or technically he's better than those guys. He just doesn't go get the uncontested rebounds. So if he's not getting uncontested rebounds, I really don't care. And so maybe that's me just, making excuses or finding a loophole or whatever. But as long as the team wants to get out and run with him in transition, I would prefer he's around the 3-point line.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. None of that makes sense. And you bring up the idea of his defense, right? And, he has all of these really poor defensive metrics or whatever. Who cares when you're guarding the best player on the opposing team? Of course you're going to have bad defensive metrics, especially when you play for Minnesota, who, Karl Towns is still not a great defender.
Yeah,
Zach LaVine is obviously not a great defender.
Yeah, they're going to be bad metrics on defense because they suck defensively.
Yeah, this is so obvious to me, I guess. I look at his defense and I'm okay, he just needs to get more attentive. That'll happen at some point. He's guarding the best player on the opposing team every night. I'm not worried. He's still 21 goddamn years old, averaging 24 points a game while guarding the opposing team's best player. What are we talking about? How is this guy not considered a future all-star? How is this guy not considered a potential all-NBA player down the road? I guess that on some level, I do get why people have that, limited feeling about him. He's still a slightly inefficient player. He's still not as great a finisher around the rim is what you would expect his athleticism to indicate, right? He still does things that, doesn't shoot the ball at an extremely high level in an NBA that continues to become more and more spacing oriented. He's still a guy that kind of clogs things up. He likes that mid post area. And if you're going to play in that area, you have to be kind of an exceptional passer, and he's not there yet either. But he's 21 years old. He's averaging 24 points a game, and he's guarding the opposing team's best player every single night. This is so dumb to even have this conversation that he has not lived up to the number 1 overall pick.
Right, and I think part of the problem is that in high school, people are hey, this is the best prospect since LeBron. And so then you immediately start thinking oh, well, he's going to be the next LeBron James. No, not even close. And I think that's okay. It's okay that he's not LeBron. And at the same time, people say oh, well, he's not a number 1 guy. Well, it's a good thing they drafted Karl Anthony Towns because he seems to be a number 1 guy. You don't need Andrew Wiggins to be a number 1 if Karl Anthony Towns is on your roster.
He played the most minutes in the NBA last year too. He's doing all of this while playing an exceptional minute load, and everything is just coming, I don't want to say easily to him, but it's coming difficultly And he's 21 years old, and as the game slows down and he really kind of starts to figure out exactly how he can, affect the game using his athleticism, because he still doesn't totally do that yet in the half court, he's going to be fine. He's going to be awesome.
Yeah, if he's the same guy 5 years from now, okay, then you can start talking about, like, maybe this isn't the ideal player.
Well, if he's the same guy 5 years from now, he's 26 goddamn years old and still has, 10 years left.
Right, exactly. And, I don't know. I think this stuff matters. He's on his third coach in 3 years.
Yeah, no, that absolutely matters.
Flip was his coach's rookie year. In a year they openly tanked for at the time Okafor, and then it quickly became Towns in the second half of that year. Flip passes away. Sam Mitchell's the interim coach, and we know the issues there. And then Sam Mitchell gets fired or gets let go, and Tom Thibodeau takes over. I do think in a little bit, I do think that consistency or lack of continuity matters.
It absolutely matters for young players. It absolutely does.
Yeah, and so again, if 5 years from now we're still looking at this and it's he hasn't really gotten better since he was 21, still a pretty good player. And all right, he didn't end up being the next great All-Star, but he's still pretty good.
Yeah. No, if you made me predict if Andrew Wiggins is going to make an All-NBA team, yes. I will say yes right now. I believe that. What would you say to that?
I put it at 60-40 that he'll make an All-NBA team sometime in his career.
If someone made me put money on it, if I was gambling on it, I would say yes. I don't think it's a sure thing, but I would say yes.
Yeah, I just think I don't know. There was a point halfway through the year last year before LaVine got hurt where people started wondering hey, does LaVine have a higher ceiling than Andrew Wiggins? I'm look, Wiggins is not great defensively yet, but have you seen Zach LaVine play defense?
Zach LaVine is maybe a bottom 5 defender in the NBA.
I love Zach LaVine. I think he's a guy I definitely want on the Wolves in the future, and I think he's fun. I think he's going to be a special shooter. All this stuff. I'm in on Zach LaVine, but he is a horrendous defender right now, and it's probably not going to be much better next year because he'll be coming off an ACL injury.
He does nothing well defensively. He doesn't guard at the point of attack. He gets lost off ball. Doesn't really always get back in screens. Dies on screens. Doesn't always get back in transition. What does he do?
Occasionally he'll get up and grab a rebound.
Yeah, there we go.
He does that.
Oh man, but Zach's fun. I agree. What were your thoughts of Zach going into his injury? Because, like you said, he was really good at the end of what I believe was his second year or third year. I can't even remember at this stage.
Second year, yeah.
Yeah, second year. He was really good at the end of that second year and then kind of got better going into the middle of this past year. Obviously, the knee injury stinks, especially for someone where athleticism is so critically important to his game, I guess. That stuff really matters. But I liked what I saw from him to the point where I thought he was a building block whenever I was a little bit more skeptical of that after his rookie year.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people freaked out about the whole him playing point guard thing in his rookie year. And one, it was to get him to understand where everyone should be on the floor. And two, it was, he gets the reps and we lose. We want Karl-Anthony Towns. This is, it kind of was just this perfect thing. They were never going, he was never going to be their point guard of the future. That was never the intention for him playing point guard. So I tried to always keep that in mind with how he played because he is a shooting guard, not a point guard. A lot of people made Russell Westbrook comparisons. I think that's simply because he could dunk and he went to UCLA.
Yep.
I think if he went to New Mexico State, no one would have ever made a Russell Westbrook comparison with him. Nope. And then, in terms of, I think my biggest issue with him is he should be so much better attacking the basket because he has those long strides. He has a quick enough first step. You do have to respect his jump shot so much that you can kind of, make defenders in that, stuck in that in-between zone of defending him, and then he should be able to take advantage of that. But he didn't totally use his athleticism. I remember, not just because it was spectacular, but he detonates on Alex Len last year, right? Early in the season. I think it was December. Just absolutely, one of the best dunks of the year. Detonates on him. And it was at that point where you're yes, that's what, no one expects you to go dunk on someone 4 times a game, right? But you wanted to see that kind of aggressiveness in attacking the basket. And so that was a nice peek into that. But still at the same time, he still doesn't fully seem to know how to maximize his athleticism while being confident in the ball, with the ball, controlling it around the rim. And I think that'll come, but it's certainly not there yet. But you look at over his last 2 years, he took over 600 3-pointers and hit nearly 39%. I think he's like 38.7% or 38.8%. That's a special shooter. That's a truly special outside shooter, and I think it's kind of like the floor for it. Like I would, assuming he bounces back from the knee injury, and it's just an ACL, so I'm not totally worried about that. Like that's not really a big deal anymore, as long as the meniscus doesn't really get damaged there. Like I expect him to be a high volume 40% 3-point shooter for his peak.
Yeah, like 3-point shooting, statistically at least, in the NBA tends to normalize, I believe, around 700 attempts. So, like, he could shoot, 34% next year or whatever. And maybe people would have some concerns, but, like, he's still going to be a high-level elite shooter, I think, going forward. There's no real worries there. The athleticism, I do have concerns about how it affects him defensively. He has bad defensive instincts in general, as we talked about. But, like, I just hope it doesn't kill his lateral momentum more than anything.
Right, and because that's where, like, as you respect his jump shot, you give a little hesitation or pump fake, and then you want to explode to the side, right? And that's where you worry about him coming back off the knee injury. But I also just never expect much in that first year back. If he still has those problems in the second year back from the knee injury, then I'd start worrying about it. The tricky thing for him is now he's available for an extension, right? And so you're not going to see him until probably late November, early December at the earliest. And that decision for the extension has to be made, by October 31st. And do you want to risk him bouncing back, being that guy, being the player he was before he went down with the injury, and then he enters restricted free agency? Because someone will give him an insane contract offer to try to pry him away, and that's a tough position to be in.
Yeah, I was going to say, what would you pay for him right now if you could try and get him to an extension? Would you pay? I mean, I don't think he's going to get the max, but like, how close would you come to the max, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd blink a little bit around like 4 years, $100 million. Mm-hmm. Like if you can get him in that $85 to $90 million range for 4 years, that is ideal to me because I don't think it's hard to live up to that contract. But yeah, once you start creeping over that, just because also like the shooting guard is just the weakest position in the NBA right now. Yeah. And so to lose a guy who could, potentially be a pretty special scorer and hopefully a decent enough defender to kind of balance it all out at the shooting guard position. Like, we're not so stuck on shooting guard small forwards anymore. It's just kind of wings, but you still need a shooting guard who can kind of handle the ball a little bit, attack off the dribble, be a guy who gets in the way defensively and shoot the ball extremely well. I think he can be that guy, and you don't really want to lose that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would probably be willing to go up to like between 85 and like 87 or 88 or whatever. I don't think I would even go to 90. I would want to see how he looks coming back from the knee injury. I would guess in like January or February. Like I would want to see a little bit more information on him because there still were problems in terms of like if he would live up to an $85 to $90 million contract. I thought I wasn't certain he would even before the injury, but I would still have paid it to him before the injury, if that makes sense. Like, I have more concerns now with the knee injury and would probably be willing to go to restricted free agency with him.
Yeah, and they'll have they'll have a much better look at him in practices and workouts and stuff. Yeah, and measuring how explosive he is before we see him again. So like I think
it's almost like the team would know better.
Right, exactly. It's almost like they have more information than us.
Shocking,
on their own players. So like I'd like to think if there is a decision made on that, they're doing it based off of a real understanding of, reasonable expectations for him coming back in the short term and him coming back long term.
Yep.
But at a certain point, like for talent, like you're gonna have to pay, right? And that's gonna be the tricky thing for them is, how do you pay outside of Towns and Wiggins for that third guy? Is he ideally that third guy? Probably not, but that may be your only real choice right now until you can kind of move things along in the future.
Yeah, like. They hit on that, 13th overall pick about as well as any team could have expected to hit on the 13th pick, right? When they drafted Zach LaVine. Like, he at least looks like a potential starter down the road, and that's what you're expecting with that. You got to pay him to keep him. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's just how he kind of comes back. Let's talk about the point guard position. Ricky Rubio, there are trade rumors, obviously, as there are every offseason, and there have been for the last 3 offseasons, it seems like. Tyus Jones obviously is still in the mix. We talked about Chris Dunn at the top and how he was a nightmare offensively this year. Where are you at with the Ricky Rubio experience? He has 2 years left on his deal. What do you think they should be looking for in a trade? And do you want to trade him? I guess is even a better question at the top.
I think for now, I've been in the Ricky Rubio camp of like, this dude makes you so much better, right? Like than what you would be without him, because he can play both ends of the floor. There are also real limitations on what you can do with him because of the lack of finishing and the lack of shooting. Now, once again, maybe he turned around the shooting this year. He had an unbelievable January, February, March in terms of shooting jumpers, and he was a high volume guy. I think he amazingly scored 20 points or more in like 3 or 4 straight games. Like, I don't think all of that was just garbage and happen chance. Like, I do think he was better at it. But I don't know how much you can count on that moving forward. He's on such a good deal right now. I don't think it's imperative to trade him unless you have a guy. And I think if you have an acquisition for Rubio, you have to get a guy who's a two-way guy in your top like 6 or 7. Like, it can't be anything less than that. And I don't even think like if they could get like a decent role player and a pick, I wouldn't totally be interested in that, but it's also the point guard position is so saturated at this point, and we're about to get maybe 5 really good point guard prospects in with Frank, with Dennis Smith Jr., with Lonzo, with Markelle, and with De'Aaron Fox, that the position's getting just even more and more crowded. So I don't know how much of a market there is for Rubio unless you're willing to pay your backup point guard $13, $14 million a year.
Yeah, Ricky's in a really tricky spot because you really need to build around him in a way that he probably isn't worth almost, right? Like, you need to be concerned about his very substantial weaknesses, at finishing and at shooting. And that's a problem offensively that you have to insulate. But is he worth taking the time and the trouble to insulate almost? Like, right? Like that's right. A really tough spot.
Right. Yeah, that is tough. And so I think before the year, the Wolves wanted to move on from him, 1, because they thought Chris Dunn was going to be really good, and 2, because just long term, if the idea is to build a championship team, and when you have Karl-Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Zach LaVine, that doesn't guarantee you a championship, but you have to think like 4 or 5 years from now, if you're not contending for a title, you have really screwed up that situation, right? You've screwed up that potential. So, if you're going to play for a championship, not that we haven't had teams in the past where they don't really have a good shooting point guard, like Celtics won with Rajon Rondo, right? And I don't know, Avery Johnson won a title once.
Oh God, you're going to get so much shit for that Rajon Rondo comment.
Right. Still couldn't shoot. Like, I'm fine. I'm pretty comfortable with that. Can't even shoot free throws. So I feel pretty confident in that. But like, there are instances where it's not necessary to have a good shooting point guard. But I think you can look at where the game has gone and think like, well, if Rubio can't even be an average shooter, there's a real ceiling on what you can do with him in the lineup. So in terms of like becoming a playoff team, they can absolutely be a playoff team with him as their starting point guard. In terms of being a title contender, I don't know. That's probably asking a lot, right? Like, it's probably asking a lot of the other guys to do that. So if the goal is to eventually win a title, yeah, you are going to have to move on from Ricky Rubio. It's just he has made them so much better over the duration of his career on the court as opposed to when he's off the court. And some of that's because their benches were just garbage. But he really does impact the game in so many ways outside of, the shooting problems. Like, he's so good defensively, he's so good at organizing them, he's so good in transition, he's a good rebounder. Like, he can do he can check all these boxes that he does make you a better team with him on the floor. It's just, can he make you the best team? Probably not.
Yeah. There's a very real ceiling with Ricky Rubio as your point guard, unless you find a way to insulate all of the issues that surround him. Like, you basically have to have 4 shooters in the lineup next to him. And that's
right. Yeah, and I think you can do that. You can build that, right? And
it's hard though.
Oh, it's very hard. Like, I think it's doable. I just think that, again, like back to the point about the free agents they've attracted in the past. Like, you're not going to get everyone to just come play there. You're not going to have your pick of, top free agents, even when you become really good. You're not going to have that. So in order to build the team that works with Rubio the best, there is a steeper learning curve. And that's, you're already behind the 8 ball with with being in Minnesota and having a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 14 years and all that stuff, to add one more thing of guys being like, "Ooh, I don't know if I want to play with that guy." That's hard.
So here's a really stupid idea. Ricky Rubio to San Antonio to kind of take over for Tony Parker and, stem the tide until Parker gets back from injury and until DeJounte Murray is ready for a sign-in trade with Jonathan Simmons.
I'm in.
Even though they don't need to sign and trade, they can just sign Jonathan Simmons. But I don't know, maybe
he's restricted, right?
Yeah, that's true. He's restricted. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you may need to do that. And I think that the idea, granted, there's still issues with Ricky Rubio shooting the ball and finishing at the rim, but him in a Popovich system on both ends of the floor,
right?
I think a lot more people. Yeah, I think a lot more people would start appreciating Ricky Rubio.
Yeah, you throw him next to Danny Green, who can shoot the piss out of the ball. You shoot him next to Kawhi, who's an elite shooter. Next to LaMarcus Aldridge, who shoots the hell out of the ball from the mid range. You can make that work. Maybe you play LaMarcus at center sometimes and add another shooter. I don't know. That kind of works for me. I dig it.
Yeah, and you're talking 2 years, right? It's not like you're extending Rubio for 5 years at max money or whatever. You're talking 2 years at $13 million. That's a really good contract for an average starting point guard. I think you can firmly place them in that 13 to 18 range in terms of starting point guards in the NBA, and you just add that passing to Pop's system. That's good.
Yeah, and then it also doesn't handicap you in terms of trying to go out and grab a different player more than anything.
Right.
Going out and I think the guy they should really go after is Andre Iguodala this summer. San Antonio would have so much more lineup flexibility against Golden State. They'd be able to do a lot of different stuff with him in the lineup, and he's just such a smart player that it would make a lot of sense in a Greg Popovich system. They would have to move money around. They'd have to trade Pau Gasol for nothing. They would have to do some different stuff to make it work. But the Ricky Rubio idea, it doesn't stop them from doing something similar, I guess.
Or you trade, you work out the trade for Rubio now. You collude a little bit. You do a little bit of tampering to get Jonathan Simmons to agree to go to Minnesota once free agency starts, and then you have Ricky convince his good friend Pau Gasol to decline his option and sign for a much bigger discount.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah.
And all of the lawsuits that would happen from the Players Association after, they don't matter. We're fine.
Who cares? Yeah,
we're good.
You're fine. Eventually everyone just kind of turns a blind eye to the collusion. It's fine.
It's cool. Let's talk about the NBA draft real quick. Number 7, Minnesota. What players are you looking at? I think Jonathan Isaac is the one that makes the most sense, but I don't think he's getting there. What is the guy that you're looking at here?
Yeah, Isaac's the ideal scenario just because he would fit so many places. They could be so versatile. I just think he's so smart playing off the ball. In terms of his cutting, in terms of knowing how to move along the perimeter. If he can shoot at the NBA level, then obviously it's an even bigger plus. And then defensively, he can be so switchy. He can help protect the rim. He can do all these things that you would want out of that guy between Wiggins and Towns on the defensive end of the floor. But if he got past Orlando, I would assume that there was a horrible medical condition that we didn't know about.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to fall to 7. So then it's all right. Do they really like Dunn, or would you go after Dennis Smith Jr.? Is he a real option there? And the optics of taking Dunn 1 year and then taking Dennis Smith Jr. the next year, not great, but I think you can kind of figure it out. Or is someone like Lauri Markkanen going to be more than just a shooter at the NBA level, right? Can he rebound? Can he be a guy who learns how to defend? Is that is that too much to ask of teaching Gorgi and Towns and Markkanen, all these young big men how to defend within Thibodeau's system? Is that asking too much of the coaching staff, or does it balance out because he's probably the best shooter in the draft? Or man, I know it's a reach, but my next guy would be OG Anunoby. I can never say his name. 7 seems super high for him, but I believe that if he hadn't gotten injured, he would be a top 7 prospect in this draft. And so you hope his knee's okay, and you hope he can, be enough of a guy off the ball to be a threat, and then you just let him be a monster defensively.
Yeah, so I kind of go the opposite way on Anunoby. I kind of think that if he played the rest of his season in Indiana, he probably would have kept falling in the draft, almost, which is funny to say, but like whenever he got hurt, I had dropped him to like 21 or 22 on my board. Like he had shown no offensive improvement whatsoever. He'd still been a monster defensively, but he is by far the most raw offensive player in this draft, and that is that's saying a lot. Whenever Ike Onigbogu and all these big guys, like all these big guys are in this draft that can't really offense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's ideal, but I also think this draft is so weak for wings.
Yeah.
And I think he has the best chance of being that guy. Like, I don't know, are you going to reach for Donovan Mitchell? Like, he jumped up because everyone's like, oh, he has a 6'10" wingspan. Like he's a fine player and he's an okay prospect, but he's
also below 6'2" in shoes.
Right. Exactly.
I'm sorry, without shoes on.
Right. Exactly. So outside of that, like there just aren't a lot of guys I love. I also think that for the Wolves, unless Isaac's there, they would love to move the pick.
Yep.
It hasn't seemed at any point that they were married to this draft pick once it, didn't win one of the top 3 spots in the lottery. And so I would assume that they're hoping Isaac is there. And then when he isn't, you could see a pretty quick announcement of a trade.
Okay. So I have another dumb trade idea.
Okay.
So the Mavs at number 9 are really trying to move up to get Frank Ntilikina. They literally just hired his coach in Strasbourg to coach the Summer League team. Like, they're not really being secretive about this. Like, everyone knows that they have scouted Ntilikina to death. Mark Cuban has met with them. Like, they want him badly. But the Knicks are sitting there at 8, and they really like Ntilikina as well. Would you be willing to take on Wes Matthews to move down from number 7 to number 9?
I would, just because
he's an interesting tips player.
Yeah, he's an interesting tips player, and he's also like a known wolf killer. Like he just destroys the Wolves, so the 4 times you don't have to play against him in the next season is good. And they need shooting, they need a guy who can defend. I think he'll be okay. A year and a half removed from that Achilles injury.
Yep.
The money isn't ideal, but it's also like 3 more years. Like it's not killer. And are you going to go get a player as good as Wes Matthews in free agency or in a trade this summer for that money?
That's my question.
Not.
Yeah. I don't think you will.
Yeah. So I'd take 3. Like you would like him to be a better, finisher inside the arc, but he's still like a 36 to 40% 3-point shooter most years. Mm-hmm. Can play some defense. I would take that deal for sure.
Yeah, and he would take on like a ton of defensive responsibility off of Andrew Wiggins' shoulder, which
there's not as much to cut. You don't need Zach LaVine to come back as quickly.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you can add would you add Tyus Jones to that deal? Like, would you say okay, we'll move down from 7 to 9, we'll add Tyus Jones, we will end up getting a guy in Wes Matthews that's awesome.
Yeah, I think Tyus Jones can be a quality backup point guard in this league, but I don't think he's anyone I would never look at him the way Danny Ainge looks at Terry Rozier, right? I don't think you can possibly look at Tyus Jones and be like, we can't trade this guy.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one for me, at least. Dallas gets a point guard. Dallas gets Frank Ntilikina, who they really want. Ntilikina, I don't really think anyone thinks he's ready to play point guard in the NBA next year. Tyus Jones probably is. That'll be a nice little bridge point guard almost, even though we keep talking about bridge point guards for Minnesota. Minnesota gets just a slight downgrade, and number 9 gets Wes Matthews. I'm in on this. It's done.
Yeah, I think it's good. And then, I don't know, you take Markkanen or you take,
take
Zach Collins or whatever. You can take someone there that fills a quality role position.
Yeah, you just move down a little bit and you still end up with the same quality of player that you were going to get anyway. And this is similar to what the Celtics just did, right? They feel like there's a certain tier, and Minnesota, I think, can take advantage of that really well and pick up a quality player. Maybe not Wes Matthews, but you can pick up a quality player similar to that level.
And maybe this will end up sounding stupid down the road, but just as long as it's not Justin Jackson. I just don't think he's good. I think when we find out he can't shoot at the NBA level, he's just going to be Matt Barnes.
So you really don't think he can shoot?
I don't know. I mean, I watched a lot of his jumpers from last season.
From 2016-17 or from 2015-16?
Well, both. I watched both seasons, and I was like, all right, the jumper is better, but I don't feel confident in that at all.
So I like the fact that he gets really good elevation. I like the fact that he gets his feet under him a lot better now. He seems to have much better balance on the jump shot. He definitely has done something at the top. He told me that he didn't do anything at the top mechanically, but
that's a lie. That's a lie. It looks so different.
Yeah, like he's actually bringing his arm up under the ball, whereas last year he would like kind of bring it to the side of his head almost. Like it was weird.
Yeah, look, he'll probably be fine, and I'll end up looking like an idiot. But he's the one guy I look at in this draft. I'm just like, no, I don't want him.
It's funny. You're the second person in like 3 podcasts to say that.
I also look at it like the Bulls situation. Like, all right, here's a guy who spent a few years in college.
The Bulls are taking him if he's.
He might not be able to shoot. He's not he's probably not going to be that good. This is a perfect like Garpax situation.
No doubt, if he's at 16, that's who they're taking.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the draft generally. I know that you've done a lot of great work over at FanRag. Who is the guy that you think is getting super underrated?
Ooh, I do like Ike out of UCLA. He's crazy raw, and like I don't know that he's going to be, but I just look at Jared Allen and Justin Patton and Bam Adebayo. Like I look at those guys, and I don't look at any of them like, oh, that guy's not a good prospect, but I look at Ike and I think like this guy could really be something. Like he could be DeAndre Jordan. And if you can get DeAndre Jordan out of like the 18th, 19th, 20th, or even deeper into the draft, that's just such a great selection. Obviously he's going to take probably a minimum of 2 years to put together any kind of understanding on the court, but he's also super young. And I look at the athleticism, I look at the size, and I just think like, get that guy with a good point guard, and I really think he could be a good quality starting center quickly once he gets that consistent minute load.
So yeah, he's someone like I'm coming around on as we get closer to draft day. I really didn't like him at all, like throughout the course of the season, at least compared to like consensus. Right now I have like a late first round grade on him. Like I have him at like 27, 28, something like that. What worries me about him is I think he's like a little bit less athletic than what people think. Almost like he's really heavy. He's like 6'10", 255 pounds, but he already has 5% body fat. So like, is he gonna continue to like just get into better shape? Like, is he gonna lose weight? But he's not gonna lose fat. He's gonna like lose muscle almost. He's just like a big bodied guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know like how that works. I mean, he's mobile. He is, can jump. He has good hands. Basically, those are the 3 skills you need. But like, I don't know if there's like a crazy amount of upside, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I think I look at I agree with you. I think he's a very good athlete. I think maybe a little overvalued as an athlete, but what makes up for it is whatever he's missing in terms of that burst, his arms are just so long that he gets to the rim so quickly, like just takes away that space between him and the rim so quickly on both ends of the floor. That's where I look at it. Like if you can get this guy to be such just a quick reactor on the court, he could just dominate the rim.
Who is the guy that you don't really get it with beyond Justin Jackson?
Beyond Justin Jackson, I'm really trying to talk myself into John Collins, and I just can't do it.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's just like not knowing if he's going to be able to shoot a jump shot at the NBA level.
Yeah.
Because if he can't I don't even care if he can hit a 3. Like if he can't hit a pick and pop 18-footer, what exactly does he do for you? And so, like, I really want to like him in terms of, being a guy who, like, in the middle of the first round could be a nice prospect to develop. But, without knowing that he can hit a jumper, I just keep coming up flat with him.
Yeah, like, my thing is that he's, like, the age of a freshman and just put up, like, 20 and 10 in the ACC. So I'm just like, all right, this guy has crazy good coordination, crazy good, fluidity. He's a good explosive athlete. He has literally 0 defensive instinct whatsoever right now.
Exactly.
But I'll just take my shot. I'll try and develop him and, see if that production goes. Because, like, I understand that some guys, especially like juniors and seniors, their production isn't going to translate, obviously. It's really hard for me to buy that, like, a freshman-aged sophomore's production, like 20 and 10 in what, for my money, was like the best conference of the last 5 years in the ACC, or at least the most talented conference. It's hard for me to buy that, like, that's not going to translate in some way.
Right, like, and like if Portland took him at like 15 or 20, where like I think like brilliant. Like, go get that guy and see if you can develop him into being that thing. If you're like Charlotte looking at him, I just think like, ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Is there a second round guy that you're looking at?
In terms of who I really like?
Yeah.
I'm all in on Jordan Bell. And not just because he listed Con Air as one of his top 5 movies of all time. Although that is a huge plus for me. I just look at him and I think it's crazy this guy's not going to go in the first round.
Yeah, I have him at like 37 right now, and I think it's really dumb. He's awesome. I have like a first round grade on him pretty solidly. I think I have him at like 24.
Yeah, and then I like who's the guy from Kansas State? Wesley Iwundu?
Wes Iwundu, yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. I'm not told. I like the improvements he seemed to make as a jump shooter this year, but it's just not enough that I feel like he's definitely going to be able to shoot at the NBA level. But I like all the measurables, and I like his game, and if he can even be an average shooter, I think he's a second round steal.
Well, he's like mini OG Anunoby, except he can play point guard.
Right, exactly. Like good playmaker.
Yeah, no, he's like a really interesting player. I think that, any team in the top 40, I would probably take a shot in the second round. Like if you're inside that like top 10 of the second round, where basically every, college player who gets drafted there gets a contract, like a guaranteed contract on the main roster. Yeah, I would take a shot on him 100%. Like I would have zero issue with that. I think it's actually pretty smart. Is there anything else you want to talk about here, Zach? Anything exciting?
You know what? I want people to embrace Lonzo Ball.
Yes, I like that.
He's really good.
He's really fun.
He's really fun. He's really good. I get it. You're annoyed by his dad. You have to divorce yourself from those feelings when evaluating him as a prospect. Like he's not going to come in and try to run the Lakers if the Lakers take it. Like he's going to start paying attention to trying to make sure his other 2 sons make it to the NBA. Right? Like he's got other things to do. He's got Big Baller Brand to run. He's got shoes to make. Probably against copyright infringement. Like he's got so many things to do. And Lonzo, even with the funky shot, I think there are some issues with him at the NBA level, especially like creating a jumper off the dribble. But other than that, like that dude can just flat out play. And I want people to enjoy him as a player because I think he's going to be really fun.
Yeah, no, that I agree with. I was incredibly lucky to get out here and really get a chance to talk with him and like meet him and see him all year out here at UCLA. He is awesome. He is so fun to watch. Whoever drafts him, that team is just going to have a blast watching him over the course of the next 9 years. In terms of all the other stuff, like seriously, if he goes to the Lakers, Magic Johnson is going to sit down with LeVar and be like, shut the fuck up. Like this is not difficult. Like when you have Magic Johnson, you have Rob Pelinka, like 2 of the most respected guys in their fields. Magic Johnson in terms of being like an NBA legend, and Rob Pelinka in terms of being like one of the most respected agents in the entire industry, who is essentially an institution in Los Angeles due to the Kobe Bryant influence. Kobe will come in and tell him to shut the fuck up. Yeah. Like
also, you know who else isn't going to put up with that shit? Jeannie Buss.
No, also, Jeannie will tell him to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. Like none of those people are going to be like, LeVar Ball's upset about something. They don't care. Like that's for TMZ Sports to get a clip of. Like none of that stuff's going to matter to the Lakers.
No, like the only thing that'll matter is if like we have a D'Angelo Russell situation again where he rats out Nick Young. Like that's not going to happen because Lonzo doesn't talk. Like who cares? Lonzo's like the best kid in the world. He's so nice. He's respectful. He's intelligent. He's emotionally intelligent. Like there's so many things to like about Lonzo Ball. I worry about the stuff on the floor. I'm not worried about the stuff off the floor.
No, not at all. And again, like I think at worst he's going to be a guy who can defend pretty well, get everyone involved, rebound, and get to the rack. Yeah. Like even if he's not a shooter, even if he's not great at getting the free throw line, whatever. I just think he's going to be a plus player as a worst case scenario, assuming no horrible injuries.
Yeah, I also just saw a photo of John Gruden's son, who is apparently like some sort of power lifter. Like a champion, like power lifter. He is basically like yoked out John Gruden, like in terms of the face, and it is the funniest goddamn thing I've ever seen.
That's creepy. It also sounds like a Pardon My Take character that they created.
No, he looks like a Pardon My Take character. Like seriously, he looks like if PFT commenter like took off his glasses, shaved off his head, and like got super into powerlifting, or like wore like one of those like powerlifting suits like for Halloween. Like that is what the little Gruden looks like. It's hilarious.
I'm into that. Yeah. I now got to find this guy.
Any funny movies that you've seen? Anything good recently, Zach? Because you're always good for movie recommendations.
I just saw two movies in the theater. Rough Night with Scarlett Johansson and everybody, and then I saw The Mummy. I recommend Rough Night. I enjoyed it. I do not recommend The Mummy.
Not even from like a bad movie perspective?
I wouldn't spend money to go see it in the theater. I'd wait for it to come out on Netflix or a movie channel or something. It's just, I was talking to Amin Al-Hassan about this, and he had a great theory on it, is that they wrote two movies and accidentally brought everyone to the same set, and we're just like, oh, we're supposed to shoot this movie. Oh, we're supposed to shoot this movie. And they're just like, let's just see what we can do. We'll put them together.
Oh my God, that is awesome. Yeah, I would not go see The Mummy. It does not look interesting to me at all.
You know what? I will cape for a Tom Cruise action movie.
So
I actually think a lot of his action movies are really good and really entertaining. And this one is just like kind of boring. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's no reason for Russell Crowe's character to be who he is. And at a certain point, there's only so much running Tom Cruise can do before you're like, let's just get this over with.
No, like Tom Cruise made like Jack Reacher watchable. Like
Jack Reacher's watchable. Edge of Tomorrow is really good.
Yeah,
that's a good action movie. That's probably mostly Emily Blunt, but it's a good action movie. Like he a lot of the Mission Impossibles are really good. Like he can make a good action movie.
Yeah, for sure. He's a good actor. He's fun. Like he is. Yeah. He's like enjoyable both in comedy and in action, which is a really hard thing to pull off.
Yeah, it is. He tries to speak what's that ancient Egyptian language? Coptic? Coptic?
Fuck, I don't know, man.
Yeah, he tries to speak that at one point, and all right, it went about as well as him talking in Valkyrie, but still, the rest of the movie should have been better.
Okay, maybe Valkyrie is a good example of how Tom Cruise movies can go wrong.
Yeah, Valkyrie's not good.
Yeah. Oh man, Zach, tell the people where they can find your work.
FanRagSports.com. We're actually going to have a live draft show during the draft, so you can use that as a second screen or third screen experience if you'd like. I'll be on there live without a censor, reacting to live news, so that can go horribly wrong. And then follow me on Twitter @TalkHoops.
Oh, I'm so excited. Like, I am much more excited for that show than I am for, like, the vertical, like, Woj show. Like, that was incredibly well done last year, and I am a Tom Crean stan to death. But, like, you reacting without a censor and just having people curse nonstop, it's going to be awesome.
Oh, it's either going to make the site a gigantic success or it's going to end it. There is no in between.
Or it's going to, like, make you a career, or it's going to, like, totally end your career.
Yeah, probably the latter, I would say.
Oh, man. All right. For me, I am Sam Vecini. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Android, anywhere that has podcasts. I am sure that we are up on right now. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe over at iTunes. It really helps us move up in the ratings. What else? We're powered by CLNS Media. This week, I'm going to have a lot of really good content over at Sporting News, particularly. Maybe at Vice as well. We'll see if I get some time to write my weekly thing over there. But until next time, we'll be back. I believe, this is the Tuesday podcast that's going to go up on Monday afternoon. Doesn't really make sense, but what can you do? I'll have a podcast with Jay King from over with the Boston Celtics over at Mass Live for Wednesday. But until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.